From job insecurity to everyone's favorite, so what do you do? Employees are being groomed both on the job and off, and accept whatever terms and conditions their employer offers. Here's what you learn in this video. What is corporate conditioning, how to spot it, and how you might be the bad guy. I'm Charlie, he's Colin, and she's Kelsey, and this is the Unemployable podcast. Welcome, or welcome back.
And on that note, Kelsey, why don't you introduce yourself and define corporate grooming for us?
Holy smokes, that was so visceral. Oh my god. Like, that is the intro to the next Black Mirror season, please. Hello, my name is Kelsey, and I would define corporate grooming as the gradual indoctrination and psychological programming of workers or future workers to maximize output and homogeneity and minimize deviation and rebellious traits with the ultimate goal of driving profitability. Dun, dun, dun.
Recited just like we taught you.
This will be on the pop quiz later, and it will be on your yearly review.
I was going to say, is this part of my annual review? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Even though you don't work with us yet, we'll get to the interview later.
Yes.
We just want to set the tone.
Absolutely, I understand. I'm willing to do 2 weeks of unpaid labor to prove my worthiness.
Oh, Charles, you hear that?
We were only
I told you
going
to find a good
one,
candidate.
but since you offered,
He insisted, Charles.
we have a kitchen on staff. Food-based incentives. That's what we're offering.
Yes, I am very food motivated. Yeah, the free
you
snacks
can use our
keep you
microwave.
around.
So on these lovely notes, I would love to start off our fun conversation today with, when did you kind of realize that corporate grooming was a thing? When did you start to feel it and understand it's not really you?
I think at my first marketing job, I was still way too bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to realize what I was being subjected to. And I think it really wasn't until maybe the second agency that I worked at, that was a remote agency, that I really started to think, this is all a farce. This is all so strange. And I think it was because I was removed enough from an actual environment, being in my own home and literally staring out my window and seeing the garden and the trees outside, and on my lunch breaks, going outside and being grounded in nature and thinking, this is real, this is tangible, this is human life. And then going back to my computer and having that switch right back into this corporate jargon and meaningless deadlines, that it really started to feel like a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. And it took me a while to come to terms with that. And I think that's probably where the seed was planted, and hasn't really come to fruition until maybe even this year that I'm truly, really uncovering all the branches.
Sounds about right. Quick favor too. Just describe your work experience so people have an idea of where you come from. And then Charles, you and I should probably do the same just to refresh people.
Yeah, absolutely. So right out of college, I went to school for creative writing, had hopes and dreams of one day becoming an author, and still want to fulfill that someday. But I knew that, or I was programmed to believe that one could not make a living being a creative writer. And I was told that going into marketing or advertising was going to be a profitable endeavor. And I was recommended to look into copy editing and copywriting. So I applied for a bunch of jobs, found my way into a marketing agency right out of school, worked there for about 3 years, then went to a remote agency in the pharmaceutical industry. Made it there for, I think, about 8 months. Surprised I made it that long, honestly. And then from there, went to a B2B SaaS company working in-house, and then jumped to full-time freelance. From there, I went into yet another corporate structure in office, again, in a hybrid environment. and I've been there about almost 2 years, but I just quit.
Hey, congratulations. That's the most unemployable thing we've had on this podcast.
Yeah.
I'll put in
Literally
that.
just put in
Audio in the background.
The one that we can all hear
yeah.
from like the 90s.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you know the
Yeah.
one.
Studio audience.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Straight from the stock library there. Which industry? It sounds like you worked in a few. Which industry do you think had the most grooming, the most cleaning activities?
Oh boy, this could get me in trouble. I feel like, Colin, you're probably gonna have the same answer as me. The dental industry is really weird. It's really funky because it's not quite medical. It is, but it's less regulated than pharma or traditional med device. And so because of that, we have this industry where people, the I don't want to say too specific, but the clients in this industry almost have something to prove because they don't feel as subconsciously as legitimate as, you know, a like medical doctor or somebody in that field. So
It's like, oh, he's not a real doctor; he's a chiropractor, kind of thing.
yeah, that kind of phenomenon. So I feel like that industry almost has something to prove, and they can get away with more because there's fewer regulations. So I think catering to that clientele puts you in a precarious position where you are susceptible to a lot of push and pull and having to take on a lot.
If I were to have had to have guessed, I would have guessed the 8-month stint in the pharma industry would have been the one.
Gotta be like,
it was, you know, I think I didn't say that one because it was more clear to me. And I think that's what's so
Like you almost expected
yeah.
it more from that industry, so it wasn't as much of like a Jesus kind of thing.
Yeah.
and I guess
was less
pharma, like they're not subtle necessarily.
Yeah, it's almost more insidious when you don't expect it, right? Because it just sneaks up on you. The corporate grooming sneaks up on you, so to speak, when you're at the ping pong table chugging some cold brew and you're like, this is great. And then all of a sudden you're crying after a one-on-one and you're thinking, hey, these things aren't adding up. Is this a good culture or is my mental health deteriorating? Because these two things cannot be true at the same time. And in those environments, it very much is. So I think that's why I answered that way, because the pharma industry is a little bit more black and white. There is a lot of boundaries that are just non-existent that should have been. And at that point in time, I had started exerting those boundaries, and I didn't really have a problem with it because it was a remote environment. I would literally just close my laptop and walk away.
Okay. So I want to carry that thread for a moment where you're talking about like the realizations of it. And Charles, you kind of mentioned that you feel like because you're on the factory floor, you're doing these things, like you're kind of, you don't really have the same experience that like Kelsey and I have run into.
Oh God, no. So
but
you cutting out there. I was almost about to, but I won't.
No, hear me out. I think you do experience it, but you're uniquely suited to push back on it. How many times has a freaking manager who doesn't run a factory line just said something wildly fucking stupid to you?
Not often.
Really? Oh, I'm impressed. Normally, middle managers experience do that.
God, I'm trying to think of how to say this without sounding like it's going to sound. I was quite brutish in my younger days, especially when I was, like my 20s and I was cutting rebar. So when the corporate guys walked around, they generally were not led in my direction. The managers knew to steer clear, and honestly, the corporate guys didn't give a shit about my presence there. So they probably wouldn't have asked me a question anyway. But I just was not very approachable outwardly and purposefully. So no, I didn't have too many interactions. I did have an interaction one time where a coworker of mine had wrote "Un más cerveza, por favor" on the back of my shirt. I was like 19. And one of the corporate guys just happened to be walking around that day. And he goes, "Turn your shirt inside out." And I was just like, "Yeah, you're probably right." So I did.
That's a funny thing.
God. But that was about it. So even as far as like the corporate sweeping goes in my manufacturing experience, it's not been crazy intense. There was one very relevant incident a long time ago where I was trying to start a union. I actually failed at the vote. But me and three other guys on my shift actually had gotten the USW, the United Steelworkers, out of Indianapolis into our shop. We got into the vote and we failed, but it doesn't matter. During that process, I was, I was like, I don't want to say a secret agent, but it didn't seem like management knew that I was a part of it, let alone the fucking point of the spirit. And my supervisor, my lead man, approached me one night and was like, "Hey, so you've been hearing whisperings about a union?" Yeah, I have. Well, do you know who started this? Like, no, I can't say I do. Well, if you do, let me know. I will, Frankie. I will. And obviously I didn't.
Meanwhile, like 007 music is playing for you in the background this whole time.
And it wasn't the first time, or it wasn't the only time, rather, that he had approached me with this. And so I think it was a little bit of corporate cleanup because there's no way he didn't know that I was part of it. This was the supervisor that I would butt heads with all the time. There's no way he didn't know. There's no way that he thought I was a corporate guy like him. And I say that charitably about him. He's a good guy and all that. So, not trying to besmirch him. Not that anyone knows who he is, but still, good guy and all that. But at the time, he was just, a company guy, and I wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. I feel like
it's just like that slight coercion, right? Because like they knew that he was on my side, and it felt like they had sent him to sort of like soften me up. Like, hey, this isn't the right thing to do. Don't be compassionate. Don't give a shit about your other coworkers. I know you guys are only making $11 an hour to break steel with other steel, but like,
it's like walking up to someone and being like, "Hey, you heard of any crime going on?" And then you flash them a gun or something, and it's like slightly intimidating, but also trying to imply like, no, I'm with you.
Yeah, like I just pull open my CCTV stream that I got. It's like, yeah, actually, here you go. You just want to scroll through it, show you all the crime.
There's Frankie talking about unionizing. Yeah, it has subtitles, so you can tell who you're talking about it. But like, so Kelsey, to your point too, one of the interesting things you brought up was like you recognized it in one place. It was transparent in other places. So far, the more we've been doing research for this topic, I'm struggling with kind of realizing how deep it goes. And once you start to pull up the layers, like you said, you keep finding branches. I feel like I keep pulling back layers on this freaking onion, and I'm just like, oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. And it started with the obvious for me of like, don't talk about your salary. Oh, come on, bugger to that. But you can absolutely talk about your salary.
That's a sneaky one.
Yeah, and there's so much of it.
About that one.
There's so much of it is sneaky like that. Like that's one, or when did we trade our paid lunch breaks for an unpaid lunch breaks? That just happened in our roles. Like,
yeah.
I was just going to take a moment to remind people that it is illegal for your employer to tell you that you cannot talk about your wage.
It is 110%.
Just want to remind everyone that.
Yeah.
Yep. If they confidently say otherwise, they are wrong.
Especially for women in the workplace and non-cisgendered people, it's really important to ask these questions. Especially people like for me as a woman, I would ask my male counterparts what they're making.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need to know that.
Most of us would probably be pretty open about that too. At least like in the manufacturing setting, we're pretty open about it. Yeah. But also like in a factory floor, you're kind of just making the same as everyone else. From what I've experienced, there's not too big of a variation. And if there is, it's not enough to like upset anyone. Like might be 75 cents here or there per hour. I don't know how it would be in your guys' scenarios, but
it gets weird because it's not like we produce a physical product in the sense you think of it. Like we still produce products, we produce results and things like that, and campaigns and yada yada yada. But like, there's more room to take advantage of that, I think, than like a hard system like you're in, where you can produce X amount per day on average at the quality that is required, and that is good. That is what you need to do. Kelsey and a lot of our stuff was constantly like, actually, no, I can't speak for you, Kelsey. I have no fucking clue. On my end, I know my stuff was a lot of, well, it's really nice that you showed the gumption. This is a beautiful project that was way above your pay grade, but we're going to need to see proof that you can continuously do this. And can you
Yeah.
really act like this? They took advantage of it. And
Mhm.
like, that's the point that I actually want to connect.
Yeah.
Because when you're mentioning that, like, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I think you even saw when I started Wondrous Agency, that was like when I was starting to get guarded.
Mm.
But like, I still believed I would find a place that would treat me well.
Yeah.
And how many times people lied to my face about that?
And it's almost like you want to believe what they're saying is true because that's what you're hoping to find, right? So that's the case for me, being that bright-eyed and bushy-tailed brand new green copywriter, and I almost feel that I owe them something for taking a chance on me.
Yeah.
Society
Yeah.
taught
And
you that
Big
this job
facts there.
theoretically
Big
shouldn't
credibility.
exist.
yeah, and so you're expected to not just meet the job requirements, but then do the work of your superiors as well to prove that you can do that job before you even do that job. Like when I was going for senior copywriter, I had already been doing the work of a senior copywriter for over a year. And it was more so the case of like proving retroactively, like this is all I've done.
Yeah.
This by definition no longer aligns with my current title.
Yeah.
So it's not, yeah, it's just not fair. It's just not fair.
What was the brooming answer to that when you brought up and made your case? Like, how did they turn it around in a way that wasn't just them admitting no, they don't want to?
Yeah, I think it's the same tried and true phrase that is, well, we expect you to go above and beyond. You're a high performer. And that's why this concept of quiet quitting is so wild, because it's literally like it's seen as doing like less, but it's actually just fulfilling your job description, right?
Yeah.
Colin and I played a clip last week about it was a Gen Zer and a Boomer sitting back to back in different chairs, and they're talking about their work experiences and all this. One of them made an incredible point that why would anyone want to go above and beyond for companies that don't value them? You basically just said all of that, but the way that she put it was like, we don't even have a chance to be loyal if we wanted to. Like we're fired the day we get hired. I almost wonder if the younger generations are not going to experience the same sort of corporate manicuring that our people our age did.
Yeah.
Do
it almost works out in corporations' favors to paint the younger generation as an enemy, because it'll give the millennials, the Gen Xers, and the boomers someone to be like, we're better than you, and that's what we can't do, of course.
Well, that is the entire playbook of the ruling class, the billionaires, the financiers, and the insurance CEOs. Like, they divide you amongst your cultures, your cultural lines, because they realize that there's billions more of us than there are of them, and that's why we're sitting here having this conversation right now, because people like us are fed up with it.
Yeah. I can't name a place. I think I was lucky and had 2 examples in hotel land where that wasn't really a thing, because they were very small properties. And again, it was a little more tied to that physical service, right? It wasn't abstract work. I wasn't pushing numbers or doing random things. Physical labor, basically, with some customer service attached. But otherwise, like most places I've worked at have extreme grooming elements. And it's so casual that I don't even think that if you sat someone down and told them, they would believe you.
Yeah.
Because like managers get it.
It's insidious. Yeah. It's absolutely insidious. And it's
no, you're fine.
It's a form of gaslighting. That's what I'm coming back to, is that, for example, to use like the title change as the analogy or the example here, going after this title change, like, hey, this is what I've been doing, and this is what this aligns with this job title. You can put whatever industry, insert whatever job title, but the response to that is gaslighting. Is, well, we expect you to do that. Well, how can you prove that? Well, how can we expect you to continue this if you haven't demonstrated a propensity for subjugating yourself to
I,
a ton of hours
I
unpaid.
kind of used to have a mentality like that. I was a foreman at a fabrication shop a long time ago, and a couple of the guys were complaining about not making enough. I didn't make enough. I just didn't make enough noise about it back then, like I should have. I was more of a company guy back then still. And I would tell them, like, if you want to make $25 an hour, work like you're making $25 an hour. The money will come. That was a legitimate belief I had. That was a legitimate belief I had. Guess what never came for me? 25 fucking dollars an hour.
So I think
That's
it's maybe
the.
go for it, Kelsey.
Oh, I was gonna say that's the perfect example of corporate grooming. You are then doing their work for them because it is programmed in your brain to think with the company's
Oh
best
my God,
interest.
I didn't even think about this. I was a
It's starting.
corporate pedicurist for like a year and a half at this place.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
the bad guy.
You were preaching. You were preaching the indoctrination.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like that, YouTube thinks you like these also. Go ahead and tell us you love it in the comments and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.